Today I am coming to you from paradise, or at least that is what the name of the city would suggest. It is undoubtedly a beautiful place, but there is one characteristic that is utterly bizarre. So here's a quick snippet of where we are, the glorious Sumtseling or Songsanlin Monastery. We're off to have a look at that shortly, but a little bit about where we are. So this is a Tibetan autonomous prefecture, as close culturally and geographically as you can get to Tibet without a really expensive permit and having to join a group tour and seeing it with a load of strangers, something I cannot be arsed with. So this is as close as we're gonna get. What is it that makes this place a little bit weird? Well, you know how real locations are used as inspiration for fictional locations in stories and films, but then they get so popular that the real location it was based on gets really famous and loads of people go to it, like let's say Edinburgh Castle for Harry Potter, right? But what happened here was the complete opposite. This is called Shangri-La City, but it's only had that name since 2001, and it was only changed to increase tourism. That's the only reason. In a little bit, I'll explain a bit more of the backstory. There is some more to it than that, and I'll also tell you why it's so significant, and it's not quite as fickle as it might sound. But first of all, let's go and have a look. Feast your eyes on this. Here it is, the biggest and most important monastery in southwest China. We are higher up than we've been anywhere so far, 10,000 feet right on the edge of the Tibetan plateau. And still there are more stairs. We are on track to see a lot more traditional dress today, and I'm here for it. I'm not trying to be invasive by filming people, but everyone looks really, really cool and I want to show you. Even got a bunch of monks on the go. I'm sure we're going to see plenty of them today. This monastery was built in 1679, so it's an old one. And the thing I said earlier about the name change, that is dead recent, but this has been here for a long, long time. These over here are prayer wheels. You spin these as you walk by. They have Buddhist mantras on them. Everything's so gold and shiny and nice. It's like being back in Nepal. And I loved Nepal, absolutely loved it. So it's a nice feeling. One of these temples is the Sakyamuni Temple. We're gonna go in. It's not the best thing in the world to take pictures and record, but you have to see it. These places are incredible. As you walk out, you look over the world. You might also notice we have two languages on things now, Chinese and Tibetan. Don't you just think everyone everywhere looks ace? So let's take a minute to talk about the name situation, what it means, why it's such a big deal, and what makes it a controversial thing to do to change a city's name. Shangri-La. Now, you're probably familiar with the name. It's synonymous with utopia and is often used to refer to dreamy landscapes and peaceful places and whatever. Maybe you know it from the source, which is a 1933 book called Lost Paradise. The book features an entirely fictitious place called Shangri-La, which is peaceful, it's surrounded by snow-capped mountains, it's a religious place, it's beautiful, but is entirely made up. It's not like he came here and then wrote about it. That was published in 1933, but it wasn't translated into Chinese until the early 1990s. People in the area got hold of it, read it, and went, hold on a minute, that sounds a little bit like here. Now let's keep in mind that although this place is beautiful, it is not the only place in the world that matches those descriptions. But at that time, Zhongdian, which was the original name of the city, and the surrounding area was mostly a logging place, but had a really bad deforestation issue, and a couple of big landslides almost decimated the industry. It kind of coincided with needing something else to support the economy and the area, and that is how somebody had the idea to, well, why don't we just name this place Shangri-La, and then more people will come, and then we have loads of tourism. It supports the local economy, the local people that don't have much else to support them, and well, I suppose it kind of worked, because I'm here, and so are all these people. Right, 1 second, just going to dip into this temple here. These places are unbelievable. Like I said, it's not great etiquette to film in these places, but for those of you who have seen nothing like this before, this is so important for this part of the world. This is unmissable, and the insides are just stunning. Look at all the colours. So, could actually be seen as a positive thing for the locals. Like, as you can see in shops like this one, it is the monks running the joint, so it is good for the people who lived here originally. But it's also heavily criticised because everyone is like, you're just Disneyfying the Tibetan culture, and you can't just reverse engineer a place to match a fictitious one just to draw tourists in. The consensus is the tail kind of wagged the dog on this one. That's such a weird phrase in English. I hope there's no non-natives trying to make sense of that. But as we've seen so far, it is a stunning place nonetheless. Shangri-La is the whole city, not just this temple, although this temple, as we said before, is the largest and most important in all of southwest China. It's a good one. And one more time from the bottom, it's an awfully cool place, isn't it? Add it to the list. China's full of them. Look at this whole area. As we duck under this magnificent archway, we enter the ancient town of Shangri-La, known locally as Dukezong. This one is going to be a bit different to the others we've seen so far, mostly owing to the Tibetan ethnicity of the locals. I think there are 147 Tibetan counties in China. This is the biggest and best preserved one. This dog looks, walks and is ridiculous. And this one's fuming because it's not getting any scran. Although looking at him, I think he's had plenty. What a whopper. This town, Dukezong, was first built in the 7th century, so it's 1,300, nearly 1,400 years old. There was, however, a big fire in 2014, so some of it had to be rebuilt, some of it is still original, but it's been here for some time. Here's one of the hints that we are walking amongst the Tibetans. Saucy little pagoda. This place is a lot like Kathmandu. Again, a positive reference, even with the fact they allow vehicles in and around the town, which the other ones didn't. A little bit more chaos to the thing, but yeah, it's a good vibe. Yeah. Having been around for so long, it was, of course, another of the stops on the ancient Tea Horse Road we've mentioned before, also known as the South Silk Road. I can't go anywhere near all this meat. I think I've got some kind of post-traumatic scran disorder after that chicken noodle fiasco yesterday. That was horrible. It's horrible. So anyway, I've gone for some melon. Good scran. So here's my picnic spot, which by the way has an enormous prayer wheel and a yak just chilling. So as I'm sat here scranning my melon, not concerned in the slightest about which body part it came from, I'm pondering some other places that had a kind of fiction reality link. I guess Lord of the Rings is a big one with New Zealand. So it's a little bit like the Shangri-La thing, like if New Zealand now officially renamed itself to the Shire, even though it was never specifically said to exist in New Zealand. It's a made-up place. And it was also filmed there, so there is actually a physical link saying this exact spot is in this film. So it's not even quite like that. I can't really get my head around it, but it's a pretty bizarre way to do things, especially when you consider how many other places in the world would fit the criteria written in that book nearly 100 years ago. And this one's just taken it and gone, yep, Bags did that, that's us now. It's an odd one, but there is one more positive thing about it. As we walk up to the highest point of the old town, you'll see a lot of people with these oxygen tanks. Because of the altitude, there's a lot less oxygen about. Starting to feel it a bit. 10,500 feet up. We are well into the range of altitude sickness. No doodling. Up here we've got loads more gold stuff and temples, never short of either in Buddhism. So this behind me is a 21 metre tall 60-ton prayer wheel. It's made of gilded copper and needs an awful lot of people to turn it. In case today was your first experience of a prayer wheel, the ones we saw earlier at the temple were the right size ones. This one is enormous. Up there, among other things, is the Sun Selling Monastery that we saw earlier. Another benefit of this whole back to front tourism city renaming debacle, which like I said is a bit of a controversy and everyone thinks it's a bit stupid, is possibly the kind of self-inflicted motivation to keep it as is. It is no secret how quickly China is developing. I think the landscape everywhere changes daily. Maybe by doing that, it's forced them to have to keep it the way it is now, not bulldoze it and build skyscrapers. Maybe changing the name helps keep it the same. How about that for a headline? So there you have it, a day in paradise, in the original, the one and only Shangri-La, the Himalayan utopia where people live long, happy lives peacefully in the most beautiful part of the world. So much so that the 1933 book was almost a non-fiction account, or at least that's what China would have you believe. Not sure about you lot, but for me, paradise is alright. It's alright, innit? Cheers chaps, see you in a bit.